Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Tips and Tricks. Today we're going to look at Waymaker's different options for resetting its sequencers and why you might want to use one or the other. So to start, I'm just going to set up a pretty simple sequence. Actually, I want this to be in minor today. Maybe, yeah, just minor. Okay. So let's create a pretty basic sequence and just see where it goes. Let's try that. Okay, so that's pretty basic. I'm going to speed up our BPM a little bit. And I want this sequence to be a little groovier. One of the ways we can do that would be to use a dotted rhythm. So let's try eighth notes dotted. And I'm going to turn on the metronome so we can kind of hear the speed of the sequence against just the basic tempo. So that's already a lot groovier. It's kind of nice how that dotted rhythm plays against the tempo. But one thing that's kind of common when we have a rhythm like this, a dotted rhythm, is to kind of do what you might call rapping, or kind of creating a hemiola effect, where we always want this note to land on the downbeat. So one of the ways we can do that in Waymaker is to look at this sequence reset option. So let's say I just want this sequence to last for one bar, and it's going to reset back to the top. Let's just hear how that sounds. Awesome. So now it's kind of groovy, it's repeating, it kind of fits into a bar in a nice way. And I think this is a pretty common effect in electronic music. Like, it's kind of like a common pattern in like house or trance or whatever. But let's take this one step further. Let's say that I want this sequence to be transposed and kind of follow a chord progression. So I'm going to put a step sequencer after this, and I'm going to make it 4 bars. If you've been on this channel for a while, you've probably seen me do this before. So I'm going to make a 4-step sequencer that progresses every whole note, and this is transposing whatever MIDI comes in. So on each step, or on each kind of repeat of this sequence, we want it to follow this chord progression and kind of be a transposed version of itself every time, where we get the original version here. The next bar, we're going to get the same thing, but a third down, and kind of move through this progression in that way. But let's hear what happens. Nothing happens. And you might have already figured out why. But this sequencer is progressing at whole notes, and we're resetting the sequence every bar. So this sequencer doesn't get to do anything. By the time it's going to progress, it gets reset back to the start. So nothing happens. But I really like this rhythm here and how it's resetting back to the start. So what's the solution? Well, in Waymaker, we have this option in generative MIDI sequencers where they can reset when they receive a note. So I'm going to go back to the main screen. I'm going to disable this sequence reset option. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a beat sequencer in front of our chain. So you can see now the first module here is a beat sequencer. It's a generative beat sequencer. And I'm going to make the world's simplest rhythm. I'm going to create one note that outputs every whole note. And then I'm going to come into our second. This is previously our first sequencer, but now it's our second. And I'm going to go into our settings. We're going to reset whenever a note is received. And I'm also going to turn off this allow notes option. So whenever a note is received, it's going to be stripped out. So now we've got this beat sequence, which is outputting once per whole note, and it gets filtered out from our signal, but it also resets this sequencer. So this sequence is now reset, and this one is now free to progress. So let's hear the result. So now we actually get this melody, but it's following this chord progression. So now we've successfully gotten this sequence kind of moving in the rhythm that we liked. However, it gets to follow this chord progression, which is longer. It's 4 bars, even though this sequence is resetting every bar. So I think this is a nice concept, and it's very modular in nature. It's something that you would see in Eurorack, the ability to kind of reset sequencers in interesting ways. If you want to go really crazy, I mean, you could reset the sequence with a Euclidean rhythm. You could reset it. You could put a probability module between them so that it happens sometimes, but not all the time. And you can kind of go nuts with it if you really want to. But I think this is one kind of fundamental technique to be aware of, which is using this kind of invisible beat sequencer just to modify a sequence that is downstream from it. So give that a try next time you're working with Waymaker. And I hope it helps you bring some melodies to life.